the last few weeks as we've been doing our morning walk, we've seen a number of houses decorated with all sorts of paraphernalia. These white wispy spider webs and large spiders, skeletons hanging here, there and everywhere. All sorts of stuff on the lawn, different greens and whites, and lots of bright orange and pumpkins. And then on Monday, as I was driving in the early evening, I noticed groups of children wandering in clusters around some of the streets, sometimes with parents and sometimes without. It was Halloween, the 31st of October. And as I drove, I wondered what these children and their parents and general society makes of this Halloween. What is it? It's become a much more commercialised, I guess, institutionalised reality in our society over the last, decade or so. This Americanised version of Halloween has taken hold. And I wonder what it means to people. And as I drove, my thoughts went back to, would have been a decade or so ago, talking with some young adults and exploring Halloween and some of the origins in this time, this occasion, this event. Some of the cultural, the folklore, the superstition, the religious, the spiritual, from different cultures and different nations. We began our explanation really in the Celtic lands and the commemoration or celebration of Samhain, which was the 31st of October. And it marked the end of the light half of the year and the beginning of the dark half of the year, the beginning that winter was coming and the darkness of winter. On this occasion, it was considered to be a thin time, a thin moment, a thin place. A place between the worlds, the spirit world and the world of material physicality that we occupy. And that the spirits were close. This veil, if you like, between heaven and earth is thin at that moment. And around it there were various superstitions and legends and folklore and cultural traditions and rituals and all sorts of things that recognise the spirits and the spiritual and the spirits that manifest themselves in various ways in people's lives. And there are a whole lot of things to either ward off spirits or celebrate them or remember them. Or connected with that was the religious festivals that of All Saints' Day, which moved from somewhere I think in May to the 1st of November under Pope Gregory III or something like that in about the 8th century. And he supposedly moved it to coincide with the dedication of All Saints Chapel in Rome. That's one commentator's view. Anyway, All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day was a day to commemorate and remember the saints of the church, those who are canonised, those who are considered holy and pure and right and had been taken to heaven. Later on, a century or so later, the next pope instituted, or another pope instituted, All Souls' Day. A day to remember the ordinary people, the rest of us, particularly those who had died, and in the Catholic folklore or versions of the time, going to purgatory and whatever that meant, remembering those in purgatory, remembering those who were in heaven. And then people wanted to remember those who were damned, who had gone to the other place. And so they beat pots and pans on the night before All Saints' Day, to remind the dead that they weren't forgotten, so that they wouldn't exact some kind of vengeance in this thin place. All Hallows' Day, All Saints' Day, was preceded by All Hallows' Eve, All Hallows' Even, All Hallows' Eve, and it became Halloween. Halloween was the night before All Saints' Day. And it was part of the memorial of remembering the saints. But also within that world, and particularly as time moved on, and in medieval Europe when there was bubonic plague and other great deaths, this notion of death and mortality was before people much more significantly. And in places like France, they had the Danse Macabre, the dance of death. This dance that happened around this time of the year that reminded people of the mortality of life and of death. And paintings going up on crypts and in mausoleums and in cemeteries, reminding people of death and this dance. And people dressed up in costumes. Some memorialised saints, and some who were poorer and couldn't afford the relics which would ward off the evil spirits or other spirits, wore costumes to hide themselves from the spirits who may exact vengeance. All of this sort of stuff is in the background and the history. Really just a reminder or an awareness of the spirit world, the spiritual in our lives, and the mortality of humans. When it is believed that when these cultures, particularly Irish and French, migrated to the Americas, and in North America came together in communities and in marriages, the traditions of Samhain, Danse Macabre, the costumes, the rituals, the folklore, the superstitions came together in a much more modernised version of Halloween, much as we know it out of the Americas. And I kind of wonder, do people really grasp this sense of the spirit world? I don't mean spirits here and there, little goblins and so forth, but the spiritual in our lives. Most more traditional indigenous cultures are much more aware of the spiritual realm, the spiritual dimension of life, our lives, that we are spirit as well as flesh and body. In our Western society, the focus is much more on physicality and materiality. If you can't see it, hear it, feel it, taste it, smell it, it's not real. And yet other cultures have a much more heightened awareness of the spirit in our lives and the spiritual dimension to our own being. This week in Luke's story of Jesus is much closer to his own death. And he's tested by some religious leaders of a particular party of the time who I guess hold much more to the view that life is this experience and that's it. There is nothing more beyond. We live, we die, and that's it. And so to test Jesus and trap him and tie him up in knots, they posed this question. If a man marries a woman but dies before having children, she marries his brother who dies before children, and she marries continuously the 7 brothers who all die before they have children. In the age of resurrection, Jesus, this one you believe in, who will she be married to? Which brother? Jesus pushes their illogical conversation aside and says, you don't understand. Life is more than physical presence, and life is spirit. Life is spirit and material. And life is not just limited to time and space, but there is this dimension of life which transcends time and space. In this mystery of God, there is something more. As we say in our funeral service, that death is not an end but a new beginning in our relationship with God in this spirit way. Whatever that means, it's mystery. I mean, no one's been there to come back and tell us the reality, the truth, what it looks like. There are people who will tell you in no uncertain terms what it is like and define it carefully. And there'll be others who deny it absolutely. There is nothing more, that's it. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. It's mystery. But what Jesus invites us into is the experience of love, which is God. This experience which transcends the material and the physical to something deeper within us, that draws out the spiritual within us. And we all have these moments and these glimpses, these thin places and thin moments when there is something bigger, something transcendent beyond this material world that we feel. To look into the sunset and be captured by it, or the sunrise. To be standing before a vista that is profound and does more than just captures our imagination in its beauty, but touches something deeper in us. Or in a song or music or a movie and a story, in art, in a relationship, in a meal of sharing stories, in holding someone in their grief and pain or celebrating in their joy. And there's something more to life, this richer, deeper thing that is part of who we are. And God invites us into that. And in the end, there is, as in the beginning, love. God is love. The heart, the essence, the purity of love is God. And all love arises out of God and holds us. And I think for me, in Halloween, or perhaps more so All Saints' Day, it's an opportunity to remember. It's an opportunity to remember the saints, the beautiful people that have touched my life, that have inspired me, nurtured me, cared for me, loved me, helped me, guided me in some way. People I've met physically and people I've only met in books or stories or movies. It's an opportunity to remember and to give thanks. And to know that in some way their presence is with me, part of who I am, part of who I become. There's a sense of spirit there. And I guess other ancient cultures would say there is spirit around us. And I guess we talk about the communion of saints in the church. Those who surround us, who are part of who we are, but in some mysterious way look on and are with us. I don't know whether All Saints' Day or Halloween or any of these occasions means anything much to you. But maybe you could take a time, a special time, an anniversary, a special day, a quiet moment to stop and to think, to remember those people who have touched you in a deep and profound way, and to give thanks. And to recognise that in them, in their love, in their presence, in their inspiration, in their courage, God is present. This God of love who holds all of us in everlasting love.